Story 1. Cooking food at home is way cheaper than ordering takeout. I cannot control others, but I can control myself and my reactions. It is important to talk to the people who are important in your life. Story 2. I took for granted all the side conversations one can have at work when running into somebody in the copy room, or the hallway, or wherever. I used to schedule a lot of things by running into people, and good stuff would come out of that. With doing work on television all the time, you have to be deliberate about that sort of thing. Also, I realized how irritated I get when my work is interrupted with non-work related matters. Story 3. Life is better with less alcohol. Before the pandemic, I always felt peer pressured into going on nights out and spent way too much time hungover and way too much money on alcohol. For the first time in 6 years, I am out of debt, and I haven't drunk more than a glass of Prosecco since 2020. I don't think I realized how unhealthy I felt all the time due to alcohol or how stressful it was being in debt until those two things weren't there anymore. Story 4. Someone needs to make a takeout container that keeps fried food crispy longer. Drinking at home is cheaper, but not nearly as relaxing as going out. Some people will simply refuse to care about anyone else, even if it's to their own benefit and easier. Story 5. Weight goes on really easily as it's so easy to lose track of days, weeks, and months, and you stop focusing on what you're eating. I've gained about 10 to 15 kilograms. The whole, I had a chocolate bar last week, what's another going to do? When in reality it was only about 3 days ago, as time seems to pass faster and you lose track of it more easily when you're at home almost constantly. A year of slightly overeating, and one day you wake up and your jeans are tight. You've lost a hole on your belt, your t-shirts are tight around your stomach, and you're like, where did this weight come from? Because you spend most of the week in sweatpants and loungewear that's all loose and comfy, and it sneaks up on you. Story 6. Today marks 1 year of working from home. I realized how much I hate the office. Working from home should be optional for positions that can accommodate it. I get so much more done, and I'm happier. Story 7. I was always a little cynical. I kind of felt guilty about it at times, how I had a mildly negative opinion of others or random people. It is the shock of my adult life that I was underselling it, that humans are far more greedy, selfish, entitled individuals than I ever imagined. Story 8.1. I'm probably not going to live a conventional life. I'm physically okay but mentally depressed and exhausted from the seemingly endless lockdown. I'm just so tired and have little want or motivation to do anything. There are so many foolish people, and I've seen my view on my home country dip further than it ever has. My body suddenly became old over the past year to year and a half. I'm 28 and suddenly I'm lactose intolerant. Get easily bloated from just about anything, especially bread, though alcohol hits me harder and longer. I had my first 2-day hangover after having 3 shots of vodka with 2 or 3 beers. 3. I didn't have a headache, but my body ached in odd ways for 48 hours. I've honestly gotten to the point where I wonder if I'll ever find a truly long-term partner. It feels like a constant battle to keep their interest, and I get dumped whenever the honeymoon stage starts to ebb. I'm just so tired of seeing little payoff in the dating world. I'm not sure if I'll stick around my home country for the next several years. I've just felt so cooped up, and the past 2 years have felt like an absolute waste. That's a short list. Story 9. That should a situation ever occur where I have to reduce my standard of living, I can be perfectly entertained preparing my own inexpensive meals and staying inside my home until my conditions improve. Story 10.1. I learned I am not as introverted as I thought I was. I miss being around people even though I generally dislike them. I miss intimacy a lot. I realized I am not happy where I am right now, and I want to move to a different country. I learned to value money. I found out my fiancée was not the person I thought she was, and I am really happy I didn't go through with the marriage. I learned German, or I am still learning. I learned how to cook properly and finally had the time to experiment. I learned I am very emotional and forgiving. I finally did a handstand and more than one pull-up in a row. Story 11. Getting a job in something other than what you planned, trained, or studied for is not demeaning and does not make you less of a man. You may even be good at it. Story 12. People are as stupid as they were 1,000 years ago. All that education and all those university degrees cannot hold a candle to fear of missing out, herd mentality, esoterics, and conspiracy theories. Civilization is 72 hours away from barbarism. Story 13:1. Reddit users are pessimistic. Reddit users as a whole think they are smarter than the general population. What does it say about me that I am here? Story 14. This pandemic has been a whirlwind for me, but overall for the better. I picked up drawing and I am so glad I did. I ended a toxic relationship and recently started a very healthy one with someone I met through online dating. I will be coming out of this pandemic with a new skill, a better relationship, and having learned many lessons. I would say I learned I am very resilient and thankful I was able to persevere through this time. Story 15. Absolutely nobody treats me working from home as a job where I can't be interacted with. I'd normally be unavailable and able to focus on work at the office, with little to no cell phone interaction. Once people knew I was working from home, it's as though my job is just some sort of personal hobby, and of course I'm available to talk or leave my computer because obviously I can't be that busy, I'm at home. Story 16. Slacktivism beats activism. Clapping for the National Health Service really brought people together and made them feel like they were doing something to help, yet many still refuse to follow guidelines that might have helped the National Health Service deal with the pandemic. I quit drinking years ago, and I sometimes wonder if that was the right decision. I started my master's in September, and I am still pretty academic despite being a few years out of practice. Story 17. It was scary having to go to work despite what was going on. I couldn't afford to miss any work. Could be the apocalypse outside, and I would still have to go to work and work 50 hours. It made me realize how I'm just one bad day away from being homeless. Story 18. There is a significant percentage of the country's population that is just absolutely terrified all the time. I would say that I learned there is an even larger percentage of the country's population that is mind-numbingly stupid, but I already knew that. Story 19. Social interaction is really important for the mental state of a person. I'm a social person, but at the same time, I do enjoy being alone. So at the beginning of this, I was like, well, it is not a problem, all this lockdown and social distance thing for me. I love being alone. But it really hit me hard 3 months later, giving me a surprise and understanding it is necessary to be in touch with other people. Story 20. Second, many people, including myself, could have had better hygiene. People could be a lot cleaner and respect people's space more. 2 meters is a good distance to keep anyway. You should wash your hands more. Carry hand sanitizer. Be safer. Be better. Story 21. People are really susceptible to brainwashing on a larger scale than I realized. It really doesn't matter what you accept or believe. There are people on any side of this argument. One side is being misled, and it's a large number of them regardless. Story 22. There were a ton of lessons. I realized how I was the one reaching out to people as opposed to people reaching out to me. I have mentally and physically not been okay, and I almost know that it will be years before I feel blissfully normal. I realized how much control the media, politics, and the government have on us individually and societally. Honestly, I feel like a pawn or a guinea pig just working and scrambling to have certain pleasures when in reality I am just being used. I realized how the middle class got poorer while a few people saw their billions double and triple, and that the rich got much richer. I can only imagine the pain and suffering others went through. The police are ineffective. Even when they mean well, you just cannot trust them. I realized that almost everyone feels and agrees with this, but we are still powerless. Story 23. I learned to appreciate the little things. I've realized many things that were important to me because I didn't have them anymore, and therefore I am not taking them for granted anymore. And most importantly, I learned just how incredibly stupid people can be. The COVID-19 pandemic wasn't that bad where I live. It was pretty manageable. Then the holidays came, and people simply couldn't help themselves but travel around and party with their loved ones during a pandemic. Now hospitals are filled to the brim, and people are dying left and right because we can't take care of everyone, since there was a significant spike in how many people were sick. This situation is also spreading like crazy now. Story 24. People won't always do the right thing for the sake of others if it inconveniences them. Even with their loved ones dropping like flies, this is the hill they are willing to and will die on. Story 25. If there was ever a crisis where the people in the United States needed to cooperate or face imminent demise, there are way too many selfish people who would look out for themselves instead of working together for the common good. Story 26. People say they will do anything to help or protect others, but what they really mean is that they will do something as long as it does not inconvenience them or make them slightly uncomfortable. People are bigger twits than I thought. Story 27. I learned that how I lived my life before lockdown is actually just called lockdown now. Nothing has really changed. I like it. I probably won't go out and do things with friends when this all dies down. I like staying in. Story 28. I learned how important it is to have a mutually beneficial relationship with your employer. I work at 2 hospitals on the administrative side in a city that was a major COVID-19 hotspot at the beginning of the pandemic. I also have a heart condition that constantly wears my body down and makes me more susceptible to illness. For a week before the mandatory lockdown, I begged my job to let me work from home. I rode the bus every day to sit in hospitals during a global pandemic. I am an executive assistant. It was absolutely not necessary for me to be in the building, especially since I was compromised. After 3 months of telework, they made me start coming in again in July. I just had a 3rd interview for a new job. Story 29. No matter how safe a decision I make for myself in terms of exposure, there's always someone out there licking glass because they weren't allowed in Ralph's without a mask. Story 30. I learned that disaster and disease movies were totally wrong, and in fact, some not insignificant portion of the population will just kind of say, "Nah, that's not real," and do their best to ignore the nightmare everyone else is living through. Also, I really do need my social connections to other humans in a way that this has highlighted painfully. Story 31. I can't do the work from home thing. I got fired during the pandemic because I spent more time playing my guitar than doing my job. I got an in-person job right after, and I'm already outperforming my more experienced coworkers. So I accept that I need structure to thrive. Story 32. There are only so many times you can masturbate in one day, unless we are coming out of daylight saving time, in which case you can add an extra 12 to the tally. Story 33. A large portion of society is so self-centered that they not only refuse to take reasonable steps to protect others from the spread of the virus, but also wear their selfishness as a badge of honor. Prior to the pandemic, I knew there were lots of jerks out there. I just had no idea how many were totally fine with endangering the lives of people around them. Story 34. I have learned that by asking, "Did you wear a mask during the pandemic?" It will be a great way to identify incompatible people from my dating pool in the future. Story 35. 1. People obviously don't know how to follow directions. People only push certain agendas for their own benefits. When things go wrong, you see people's true colors, and I wish I never had to see those colors from certain people. We as humans think we have way more control over the grand scheme of things when we really don't. People are incredibly selfish, but the majority of us try to portray ourselves like we actually care about others. Story 36. To appreciate my friends and family even more. I still gripe and grump at them sometimes because I can be a pain to be around. Yet, at the end of the day, not getting time with them has really cemented how much my loved ones mean to me. Story 37. I like the idea of working from home in theory but hate it in practice. I am probably one of the few people who enjoys commuting, driving, and I can't keep my focus at home. Story 38. I really don't care about trivial matters anymore. I'm conscious of the fact that I've got one life, and I should not and will not waste extra energy on things that don't matter. Story 39. I'm a good deal mentally tougher than I thought. I have battled depression and anxiety a good deal throughout my life. I currently live in Vietnam and have for 4 years. I'm a United States citizen. I have been used to going home once a year, and my parents come once a year. The last trip home was in May 2019, and my parents' last trip here was in November 2019. I haven't seen them in person in so long. Haven't seen my friends, my hometown, my culture, my native tongue, etc. I started waking early and working out. Anxiety and depression are generally pretty low. I have no idea how I'm okay, although I'm really not. although I actually am. Just wild. Story 40. There is a stark difference between solitude and loneliness. As an introvert, I always said I wanted the latter, when in reality, I am far more comfortable with the former. Spend hours just watching movies by myself without talking to anyone? Hell yeah. Spend weeks without being able to talk to anyone and nothing to keep my mind busy? Hell no. Story 41. Having long phone conversations, even silent ones, with coworkers is beneficial. Technically, I learned this a year before, but it seemed true during COVID-19. When I started working remotely with my agency in 2019, I had a coworker who also worked remotely and called me periodically to talk about tasks and next steps. She would finish the conversation but wouldn't hang up. We would keep working on emails or briefs and be in silence for minutes at a time. After being uncomfortable the first few times, I got used to it and understood why she did it in the first place. To feel like you're in an office while at home. Come COVID-19, we kept our routine and didn't miss a beat, while everyone else tried to acclimate the same way. I still thank my colleague to this day.